Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salam alaikum. My name is Taif, and I'm the president and co-founder of an organization, nonprofit organization called Minds, which is a community development foundation. We started the organization specifically to provide free medical healthcare, specialty healthcare to the uninsured or underinsured patients, regardless of age, ethnic background, or religious affiliation. From there, alhamdulillah wa shukr, we development into a community development foundation where we now also provide mental health assistance specifically to the Muslim community. I am a executive board member of the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health on their faith-based advocacy, as well as I am a member of their underrepresented ethnic population. One of our goals, inshallah, later on in the next couple of months, we can also do a mental health lecture that's going to be specifically in Arabic, because we are now targeting also the Arabic community through the underrepresented ethnic population with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. So inshallah we'll be doing that. And then the third aspect of our nonprofit organization is providing job trainings in the health sector as well. So that's on a nutshell some of the work we do. Alhamdulillah wa shukr, our organization averages about $750,000 to $1 million a year in the services that we're providing at no charge to the recipient. I was asked to come over and discuss mental health from the beginning and the aspects of mental health, inshallah, and then we move forward with it. And we can continue it as a series. I've been doing this series also at the Rancho Masjid, as well as Masjid Jibril. So please feel free to ask a question, catch my attention, wave hand or something, inshallah, we'll address them for you, okay? So first of all, are mental ill people violent? What do you think? Yes, you're saying, okay. Actually, sister, no. The risk of violence is only slight, if at all, increased with mental illness. Okay, mental illness does not bring violence with it. Sometimes it's the stigma behind it, that people believe that all mentally ill people have violence tendencies. That's inaccurate. They actually become violent when somebody cannot understand them or misapproach them. That's where you see the violent tendencies. Mental illness is a character flaw in people that people can outgrow. What do you think of that? Is it possible to outgrow it? Yes, brother. No. Jazakallah khair. Okay, so the answer is mental illness is a disease of the brain, and it is well documented by a biological dysfunction. And we're going to talk about it here from a spiritual, inshallah, component to an actual organic component of it. People on psychiatric medication become like zombies. Is that true or no? Kind of. Good answer. That's true. Depending if they are over-medicated. However, your treatments are relatively safe and they are non-addictive and have less side effects on them. Yet, we do still see that there's some side effects that if you over-medicate a person tend to go down a little bit. This thing is super loud. I mean, am I projecting too much? Please tell me if it's too loud because, okay, all right, inshallah. So if we look at history from an Islamic point of view, we'll look at that the first mental health institute was established in 705 AD, and that was in Baghdad. It was the first psychiatric hospital built by the Muslims, okay? So, mental illness, I would like to emphasize on this, was first recognized by the Muslim community. Some people will tell you that it was actually an institute in Egypt. I'm more fond being of Baghdad because I'm from there, alhamdulillah. Okay, so I'm a little bit more biased. I was actually told that, some said that was in Egypt, but I could not find any literature to substantiate it. So it was under Islam that mental illness were considered are incapable, yet deserving the human treatment and protection. Before that, we see that people did not recognize them as mental illnesses. They looked at them more as possessed, demonized, and people were actually burned with this, in fire, alive, because they felt that this is the way to take care of them and get rid of them, because they could have been related to witches or all those different beliefs. Ibn Sina actually focused on the fact, who was very knowledgeable, alhamdulillah, shukr. He focused on the fact that mental illness has an organic component to it. There's the spiritual component from the religious point of view, but he rejected that mental illness was strictly from an evil possession point of view. And it is documented in his writings. Ibn Hazm in Spain, he talked about anxiety is everything that occupies a human being mind as a result of desire, such as anxiety of poverty, sickness, being undistinguished, missing pleasure, or ignorance. Ibn Hazm asserted that its only way to get rid of anxiety is to direct oneself to Allah for good deeds. Okay? We know for a fact that person who have religious affiliation, they have less anxiety because of, regardless of the faith they believe in, okay, when there is a purpose in life and they know that they're serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, then there's less anxiety. Otherwise, for somebody who does not believe, you know what, my income is being brought to me by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I can work super hard and not make anything because Allah did not will it for me, or I could be blessed and Allah willed for me that I can receive X amount of money somehow, somewhere. Okay? So if we're going to start develop anxiety because we don't have the proper faith, it was asserted back in, Ibn Hazm in 994, that anxiety is seen less with people who have faith. And there are studies, and I'll mention to you, on how the power of healing through prayer, power of healing through different faiths, does make a huge difference. So spiritual disease, which we all know and we all believe, and it is mentioned in the Quran, that Muslims believe and attribute that mental illnesses is due to a spiritual disease or from distant from Allah. This does not necessarily mean that everyone who suffers from mental illness is morally or religiously deficient. We have to substantiate this, okay? Is the issue of jinn. Yes, we do recognize, Allah has mentioned in the Quran, there are jinns, okay? But that does not mean a schizophrenic person or a depressed person or a bipolar person have to be possessed by jinn. Like I said, Ibn Sina have made it very clear in his research in the old days that there's an organic component to the mental illness versus the spiritual component. We're not taking away the notion that no, there is no possessions. We know for a fact, and I'm sure that Sheikh over here can tell you that there are people who we need to do the dua for them, address the spiritual component for them to help them heal. However, we're talking here specifically about people with mental illness which need to be treated via either medication or counseling because of the fact their hormones in their brain are imbalanced. It is also, people may believe that detachment from Allah may increase the likelihood of difficulties such as depression, anxiety, and then may lead to substance abuse and self-injury and self-killing. Well, that's a fact. We know that if a person is completely being detached from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he is most likely going to suffer different things, and he is going to see himself being pulled toward alcoholism or drugs or whatever. That's a fact. Nobody can argue it. And we know that alcoholism, drugs, all these different substances that are being abused do affect the brain, can lead to depression, can lead to anxiety. So a person with weak faith may struggle from understanding certain stresses of life, events, or may even be easily afflicted and influenced by jinn. That's also a factual statement. We know that a person who has weak faith, he's going to be more influenced by the different components of stress in life. Whereas if we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we believe in the qada and the qadar, those are aspects that we have to accept and we have to understand from our normal life. The supernatural forces, where people believe that their methods may be attributed to their mental illnesses, are whispering or magic. Okay? Where a lot of Muslims believe that one of the primary ways for an evil jinn to influence somebody is through whispering, affecting them, okay, through jinn, shaitan, or the magic, where a lot of our cultural, and let's not put it on a Muslim, but a lot of our cultural beliefs are, well, somebody can go ahead and make this ritual against somebody, and then it will affect them. They're going to have now depression, they're going to have anxiety, sihr, and all these things. And regretfully, what do we see? We have in our culture strong belief in the blue eye that we wear, or some people hang it in their homes, the shoe horn or things like that, saying, okay, this is going to push away the evil. Yet the Prophet ﷺ told us, read the ma'udat, protect you from the evil eye, protect you from hasad, protect you from all these things. Read the ma'udat. There is definitely a religious component that we know that can protect us. So why not rely on it? The evil eye, like I was mentioning, and then possession. Possession is something that can happen. We're not denying it. Possession can happen to people. However, that does not justify every person who may be suffering from schizophrenia, or every person who could be suffering from depression. Now, I can guarantee you one thing. If we were to look at the criteria where people is identified by the DSM-4, which is the book which has all the identification, the codes, when they look at mental illness, I can guarantee you that all of us in this room, including me, number one, we will all be categorized with a mental illness. Okay? Simply because of the fact we've all had depression in our life, and sometimes even throughout the day. We've all felt super elated and super happy at times, and we've all felt super down at times. At the same time, I can guarantee you we all have a component of obsessive-compulsive disorder because of the fact we are all so much attached and enslaved to our smartphones. Okay? We can have it on vibrate. We can have it on giving us a sound. Yet what do? Every 5 minutes, right? We check. Maybe I missed that message that I've been expecting, okay? We reach out, okay? And if you look at it, it is a disorder when it comes to the fact that we becoming more mentally attached to it, and now we become a compulsive users of it. In the past, at least, we used to memorize phones, and we used to know everybody's name and phone and everything. Now we don't even remember our own spouses or our own family's phone numbers because it's on the phone, So the Quran, has talked about nafs al-ammara, which is the soul that commends us. Okay, this is the primitive, the impulsive inner aspect of it. Nafs al-lawama, which is the soul that blames us. And then in nafs al-mutma'inna, which is the balanced, the satisfied. Okay, all these things are actually mentioned in the Quran. Okay, so when we talk about the Quran, the science of it, mashallah, subhanallah ta'ala, has blessed us with so much sciences in the Quran that we are little by little learning about it. I mean, I personally, being a man of science, I look for these scientific facts. And I always challenge people when they say, oh, Muslims are not fair to their women. Oh, Islam does not represent, women. I say, okay, how many times do you know the word men are mentioned in the Quran? Anybody want to give me a shot at this? The word men, how many times is it mentioned in the Quran? Men? How about women? What is it? More than men? Same amount. Do you know what it is? 23. Now, the word men and the word women are mentioned actually 23 times. Equal. How much more can we ask for equality? Now we look at it from the scientific point of view. Because like I said, I love to look at science. What does that equal? Who said that? Jazakallah khair. Okay, the number of chromosomes in our body. Okay, so subhanallah. When you look at it, okay, there's so much science in the Quran, we just learn about them and we discover them as time progresses. Back to your brain, the most complex organ in the human body. Okay, different brain areas control different things. The brainstem, for example, okay, The brainstem is what controls the critical life functions such as your heart rate, your breathing, and your sleeping, and etc. And the fact that when you feel hungry, okay? We were in a medical mission in Peru, and there was this one child, almost a year old, subhanAllah, I never forget it, is because this child looked like about a 3-month baby. And the guy that was with me, he looked at him and he's like, something seriously wrong. And I don't know what he thought about, but immediately he asked for a blanket and a flashlight, okay? And he put it, he took the blanket, covered the child with it, took the flashlight, put it on the head, and it literally just like a globe, okay? It's just a light. You can see the globe of it. Why? Because the child was born without a brain. Anencephaly, okay? A medical condition. Usually those children don't last more than a couple of months. This child lived to almost a year simply because the brain stem, even though he doesn't have a brain, but the brain stem, which is the base of the brain, is where our functions are being, controlled. So the child, every time he was hungry, the brainstem tell him to cry. Brainstem is controlling his breathing. Brainstem is controlling his heartbeat. Okay? So brainstem plays a very, very important role. The limbic system, which is our reward system, our ability to feel, oh, I'm happy. Every time we do something good, we feel happy about it. It's also about our emotions, okay? And then we have the cerebral cortex, which is our sensory. And it's where we think, we plan, we solve problems, and we make our decisions. The neurons of the brain is what the electricity of the brain is traveling through. That's the simplest way I can say it. It's where everything, channeling, how things are going back and forth. When we're looking at it, information, it's all going through the neurons of the brain. It's very important when we recognize this because if you have a child, the first 5 years is extremely critical. The more movement, the more he's exposed to, the more neurons are being developed and more tracks are being developed in the brain. And the function of these neurons, we're finding out more and more, is that, God forbid, if somebody is paralyzed, but he does have the will and the drive to keep on moving, to keep on doing things, they can actually start developing tracks and utilizing tracks of the brain that they had not used in the past. So these neurons are extremely important in their development. The receptors, of course, there's specialized receptors that pick up different chemical messages. And then, of course, there's the transporters which help recycle these chemical components which we are being released and being utilized by the neurons, such as the dopamine, the serotonin, the norepinephrine, GABA, and glutamate, and the endorphins. Okay, so what is mental illness? Definition of mental illness is a disorder that is diagnosable and condition that affects the person thinking, emotion of the state, their behavior, and disrupt the person from their work, normal activity, engaging in a satisfying relationship. So, having this, right there, this definition, can anybody tell me that it doesn't fit him? We've all have lost work somehow. We've all have, when we feeling down, not happy, we call out sick. You don't want to go out and do something. You become reclusive to yourself. You don't even want to talk to people. It may last for a day or two. You may say, okay, I'm coming down with a cold. I just want to be left alone. Okay? But that is a small bout of depression, which, subhanAllah, as a Muslim community, we can attribute it to a lot of things that are going around us, from overseas to the news that we hear over here. That's why I was saying that we all have experienced mental illness at some time or another. Published studies reported that about 26.1 of the U.S. adults have a mental illness. Now, this study did not distinguish white versus black, born citizen versus non-citizen. They just took a group of people within the population and did the studies on them. So, do these numbers affect the Muslims? Of course. Everybody's just equal in it. We are no different from them. And in all honesty, they have not even found any differences in the rates of depression, bipolar, and we are even finding out that suicide in our community is almost at the same rate and sometimes at higher in different areas of the United States. Nearly 50% of the US adults will develop at least one mental illness during their lifetime. And that, of course, also affects us equally. The affliction of people is regardless of gender, culture, religion, and economic status, as I was mentioning earlier. The treatment could be a combination from medication to psychotherapy as well. The prevalence, as I said, is 26.1. When we look at it within the United States, as I said, it's 26 of the entire population. 18.1 of those are anxiety disorder. 6.7 is major depressive disorder. 3.8 is substance abuse. 2.6 is bipolar. 2.1 is eating disorder. 1.1 is schizophrenic disorders. Mood disorders, they are unlike the normal sadness or the grief that a person feels due to a loss or normal life. These are normal, their mood the person carries on for a much larger and longer length of time, as well as the type of presentation when they are, having the elated point of it or down coming with the depression point of it, it's affecting them. Clinically depressed person loses all interest and hope in life. Please don't think just because a Muslim person does not believe in committing suicide that a depressed Muslim person is not going to go ahead and may not take his life away. Okay? A depressed person is so depressed they honestly cannot tell what's right from wrong at times. Okay? And that's why if you look at all the commercials, when they're treating medication that they give medication with depression, they tell you warning, may lead to suicidal thoughts. And that's because of the fact when a person is so depressed, so down, and then they end up taking some medication, first thing they're going to feel like, okay, now I can get up, now I can do something. I don't want to go back into that, what I was feeling, and sometimes they end up taking their life away. Okay? So it's very critical and very important that when treating somebody, that there is a balance and that they are being followed, not just from a physician point of view who is prescribing the medication, but from a psychological point of view and from a community point of view and home and everything. There has to be proper support. Okay? The worst thing that can be done to any patient with mental illness is being shunned away by the community, by the family, immediately thinking, I don't want to deal with that person. I don't feel safe to be with that person. I don't feel that my children should be around that person. That actually can have a lot of negative repercussions. Loss of their appetites, as I was discussing earlier, finding it difficulty to sleep, no depression, very, very common. They also may become unable to look after their own needs. So it is very important that somebody assist them. That's why you always hear somebody who's been reclusive in their own home. They've been suffering from depression. Nobody's being able to visit them. They go in. Their home smells like feces. They haven't showered for God knows how long. These are very, very common things that you see in a depressed person. In a manic state, their minds may become overly active and they make the grandiose. That's where now we're looking at the bipolar. Okay, the bipolar person, and the reason they call it bipolar is because they're going from one aspect to the complete other aspect. They go down from being completely depressed, where it's so hard to pick them up and get them to move, to a completely the opposite end, where now they are elated, super happy, super excited. They don't even get sleep. If they get it's only a couple of hours a night because they're just so energized. And it is also accompanied by multiple aspects that was easily recognized by what they call they're being expensive, meaning that they're literally clearing their bank account. They're hyper talkative, hypersexual, and they're just driven all of a sudden. That's very common in bipolar. And most bipolar people actually are the easiest ones to treat because they know when they're going up or they're coming down, and they reach out immediately for help. A bipolar person most of the time will tell you, you know what? I'm either coming down, starting to crash, or I'm reaching the opposite end, and they reach out for help and assistance. Mood disorders, like I was saying earlier, there's the major depressive disorder, the bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorders. It depends on the type of depression included with it. Dysthymia is a type of depression where completely person is being reclusive. Postpartum depression, extremely common. Very, very common. Baby's blues. It was always thought that only women suffer from postpartum depression. That's because of the change in the hormones and all the biological effects that are happening on the body. Now we know that men go through postpartum blues. And for the men, it's because now the adjustment in their life. All of a sudden, there's a baby in the house. All of a sudden, they're not getting the attention. All of a sudden, they're not getting enough sleep. All of a sudden, they feel like, oh my God, I gotta now work harder to provide for this child, and so on and so on and so on. So postpartum blues is no longer only describing a woman because of the hormonal changes that the body goes through, but it is actually affecting both men and women. And then there's the seasonal depression. We know that in the Scandinavian countries where there is not enough sun, a lot of winter, okay, there's more depression. We also see it in the hospitals. We also see it in different, different communities where we call, sundowners. As the sun comes down or there's less daylight times, you'll see people are depressed. So all these things do play a role. Now, we know for a fact for the Scandinavian countries, the fact that they don't get enough sun, it affects multiple aspects of the brain. From hormonal point of view, that's why those people take melatonin in extra quantities and other medications to assist with it, because seasonal depression is extremely common and it is one of the easiest ones to treat. Depression, there is a lot of information on it. I mean, the symptoms is like we were talking about earlier: hopelessness, uselessness, being apathetic, unresponsive, less desire to sleep, or excessive desire to sleep. But it's very common. It's very hard for them to, fall asleep. They feel worthlessness. They may not even, they feel like they might as well be dead. Their emotions are not there. They're extremely fatigued and tired. They're constantly feeling like they're carrying a lot of weight on themselves. They're sad. They could be also anxious at times. They're short-tempered. Okay? Now, within our community, I can guarantee you, most of us are short-tempered. It's just the nature that we've always been raised in the way we are. Okay? But that does not mean just because we're short-tempered, we're looking at it as this is now a slew of only depression. Short-temperedness, it also affects from personality disorders, which is completely different. So please don't mix it over here. Okay, they may feel down. And then, like I said, being, their attitude completely different and changes. They're irritable, okay? They feel miserable. They're void. They're empty. They feel like there's no sense of life, okay? So, having said that, an argument can come. Well, if you're praying and if you're reading the Quran and if you are engaged with the masjid and if you're doing all these aspects, you shouldn't feel all these components. And the fact is, no. This is a hormonal deficiency in the brain. This has nothing to do with the spiritual component. The only spiritual component here that may help is the fact that, you know what, I believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This could be a test. Let's ride it through. Let's reach out for assistance from a physician. Let's reach out to assistance from our community. Let's not alienate the brother or the sister. Let's assist them. So, please, I'm going to focus on this point throughout this evening, and that is, there is a biological component to mental illness, not just a spiritual deficiency in the person. A lot of times people of no faith will tell you, you know what, I was schizophrenic, I had this spiritual journey, and that's how I found God. Okay? And reality is because we know when we are down, we start bargaining with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm feeling sad, oh God, make me feel good. I'll be a much better person. Okay? Oh God, I'm sick, or my family relatives are sick, or my child is sick or something. Please let them heal, let them feel better. We've all have bargained, we've all have done these kind of things, okay? So for a person of no faith, a lot of times when they talk about their spiritual journey is because of the fact now they are thinking and they see it as, okay, they're bargaining. They see that, okay, I'm reaching out over here to God, and I'm feeling like, okay, it's coming to me now. I'm feeling better and all that kind of thing. So let's, focus on the fact that they're two different things. The spiritual component aspect is a spiritual component, and the mental illness is more of an organic component. Some of the risk of depressions is the distressing and the uncontrollable event. We're going through it in every single day. Just looking at the news, and if you have Al Jazeera or you have any of the Arabic channels or any of the back home channels, may God help you, because they're full of nothing but bad news 99% of the time. I've never heard Al Jazeera give a happy report more than, they're always focusing on the negative reports, okay? And it's really desensitizing us, which is very sad. Exposure to stressful life events. Illness of a spouse, illness of a child, death in the family. All these are very stressful. Difficulties childhood, okay? Ongoing stress and anxiety. Financial could be an issue of it. Another mental illness, very, very common. One mental illness are always in component with another mental illness. Is always there together. Previous episodes of depression. So, previous episode of depression, if they're untreated, they can develop into a much stronger, much larger. Family history of mental illness, regardless of where it is. There's a lot of studies that have shown with the twins or with the members of the family who have mental illness, it trickles down in that family. More sensitive and emotional nature. Okay? Illness that affect life-threatening, chronic illnesses, cancer, for example, or associated with pain. Medical conditions. Side effect of medication. There are some medication that do causes depression by themselves. Recent birth, as we were talking earlier. Premenstrual changes because of the hormonal changes. Lack of exposure to the light. So in the winter, we were talking about the seasonal or the downers. And the chemical imbalances. And then the substance. Bipolar, as I was talking earlier, is where a person is up and down. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because, there's more important things that we need to. So, the imbalance, and I understand, but the thing is that the chemical imbalance is already there, okay, and then it gets even more pronounced. The depression gets even more when somebody now have a life stress. So, for example, somebody may not feel so depressed if they lost their job. Okay, let's not take it to the extreme of loss of a life of somebody else or a spouse. Okay, but then if they have already a low hormone in the brain, okay, low serotonin, for example, okay, they've been riding along almost on the edge. They're not the happiest people, but they're going by. It's not a big deal. But now all of a sudden there's this stress of a loss of a job, financial issues, or something like that. Now they go down to a depression. Okay, so of course there is the life stressors. But the chemical imbalances almost tend to be in the bottom side of it that plays a role to magnify it. But at the same time, okay, there are times where the chemical imbalance becomes due to the fact of the life stressors, okay, such as cancer, such as the medication that a person is receiving to treat another illness, such as the depression itself because of the external life stressors. All of a sudden, the person is not going to have enough sleep. It's going to affect his circadian rhythm. The lack of food that they're eating is going to start affecting their sugar imbalance. And then it trickles down all the way down to the brain and start causing now a chemical imbalance. So it is a very vicious cycle. That's why there's always the most, for a successful treatment, you need the medical component of it, which is the pharmacological point of it, as well as the psychological component of it for treatment. But Jazakallah khair for clearing it up. So as I was talking earlier about the bipolar, very common, the changes, one person goes from one end to the other, okay? and their mood changes, behavior changes. Like I was saying, they could be feeling tired, and then they could be all of a sudden feeling extremely elated and very happy. Okay, bipolar 1, as I was saying, versus bipolar 2 earlier. Bipolar 1 is more of a manic episode with a major depressive disorder, where bipolar 2 is more of a hypomanic, going up and down with a major depressive disorder. So, no, these are bipolar is one of the easiest ones to treat, and with a medication called lithium. Okay? Lithium. Yeah, you take patient take medication, they become extremely balanced. Lithium is actually one of the safest and yet the oldest medication. Has the least side effect. But it has to be maintained in a very, very small balance. I mean, any way you tip it up or down, it can affect. Hypomanic episode, like I said earlier, it was a mild to moderate mania and a shorter in duration and the severity of the mania when they go up. Prayer by itself will not resolve it if there is an organic component to it. However, does prayer help overall? No doubt about it. Okay? There was a study in San Francisco General in 1978 where, if I recall, they took over 300 cardiac patients who have severe heart disease, and then they separated them. And then they took half of one group and asked people who are not even related to this particular group to pray for them. And the other half, they just left them without people praying for them. The half that received prayers did much better in recovery, had less complication, whereas the other half did not do well at all. So prayer do help. Okay? No, they were not. They were not. Okay? Now, I personally experienced the power of prayer with my own mother. Okay? I honestly tell you. 2 years ago, when she was about to travel to visit some relatives in India, we said, okay, go through a health checkup. All of a sudden, we find out she has colon cancer. Okay? Alhamdulillah, shukr, with the connections, immediately within literally 48 hours, she was having her surgery. One of the brothers, who is known in the community, called me and he said, I heard that your mom is having surgery. My parents are right now in Mecca. Do you mind you give me her name so they can pray for her by name? Now my mom, subhanAllah, she is the one person who, if she has a headache, she lets you know she has a headache. She finished her surgery about 8 p.m., got out of the intensive care unit close to midnight. By 10 o'clock in the morning, my mom is walking. Okay? And I was like, I did not leave my mom for a single minute, and I know she did not take a single type of painkiller. How is this possible? So I confronted her. 10 o'clock in the morning, she went for like literally a 40-minute walk after they took over 2 feet of colon. I said, wait a second. Either something went wrong with anesthesia that affected your brain, or what's going on here? And wallahi, her answers was, I feel the power of prayers of people that I've known and those who I don't even know, but I feel so much power of prayer that is giving me energy, and I don't feel any pain. Okay? Wallahi, if somebody else tells me the story, I would not believe him. Okay? But it was my personal experience, and I was with her in the hospital for the entire duration, so I know she did not even take a single painkiller medication, and she did not during her entire stay in the hospital. So the answer to your question, do prayer help? Yes, no doubt about it. But would medication assist? Yes, it will. And there are certain illnesses, medication is really needed, especially for something such as bipolar or major depressive disorders. And same thing goes for schizophrenia. Okay, the prevalence in the U.S. population, as we said earlier, is 18.1 for the anxiety disorders. I'm sorry, this is anxiety disorders, has 18.1. Now, anxiety could be a specific phobia. Some people may be scared of being in an elevator. Some people may be scared of being in a height. Some people may be scared of, a spider. There's different specific phobias. There's people who have social phobia, who cannot be in public. That's very common. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. One of the most common anxiety disorders right now in the United States. Specifically, it's being seen by all the soldiers that are returning from different battlefields. Okay? Now, does that mean only a person who is going to go to war has PTSD? No. A lot of the immigrants that come over from countries that end up having PTSD from their experience back home. Also, PTSD can be showing up in a person who may have some minor chemical imbalance, but then go through this horrific, for example, car accident, okay, and they end up in the hospital for a while. Now, being in the hospital, that setting, not being able to know the time, a lot of times, people in the hospitals now, there's a lot of changes about the treatment in the hospital. They may not know what time, what day it is, then it affects them the Down syndrome, being the downers, then the stress from the car accident, the financial impact, so on, so on, so on, they may end up having PTSD. So PTSD, yes, it has to be a major life event that affects somebody. It's usually for a long period of time. So a normal fender bender or normal accident that you and I may go through is not going to lead to it unless there's other component to it. Okay, panic disorder. Okay, I think we've all experienced a panic disorder. Okay, we've all have received a phone call that we did not expect, or opened a piece of mail, or something happened, or sometimes we just think of something that may have an impact on us, and we're going to see ourselves hyperventilating, going into a panic disorder. These are extremely common. Obsessive compulsive disorder, like I said, we all have it with your cell phones. Okay? The agoraphobia without panic, that's a different type. And then there's the anxiety disorders, which is just general anxiety disorder that is general without a specific diagnosis. General anxiety disorders is a persistent, overwhelming, and unidentified anxiety and worrying accompanied by multiple physical and psychological symptoms. So one of the most common things that we see with anxiety disorder is GI symptoms. Okay? We say, oh, okay, I got the butterflies. That's good. If you only have the butterfly, that's good. But some people will go into severe diarrhea. Some people will go into severe, unable to even go to the bathroom. Some people cannot even deal with it completely. Some people start vomiting. So different ways that it can precipitate. A panic disorder, okay? One of the most common things, people go into having a panic disorder, anxiety attack, thinking they have a heart attack. Very common. You'll see people going to the ER. Okay. My chest is hurting me. I feel like my heart is stopping. And they will go, and my arm is killing me. And you're looking at them, okay, which arm? And he's like, my arm, I can't even move it. Okay? Well, you've already ruled it out because it should have been the left, unless you have dextrocardia, which it does happen. Some people have a heart being on the right-hand side, so we cannot just immediately depend on that. The minute somebody comes in with an anxiety disorder, if they're complaining of their chest, before we just say this is anxiety disorder, of course, you're going to have to look at their blood work to rule out, any cardiac events. But are these only looked at for men? No, they're also looked at for women. And if you look at it, who has more anxiety disorders? Women. Women, okay? So, in the past, it was a rule of thumb. A woman comes with chest pain, anxiety disorder. However, now they're seeing that actually heart disease is just as common, and women above 40 years old are more prevalent to heart attacks than men because of a lot of studies that are being shown that the hormonal changes are affecting them. Okay? Phobia of intense fear, which is the restriction of activity due to a fear of a specific object. Okay? So, sometimes, especially with our community, we have the phobia of the law enforcement. So, because of that, I'm not going to come to the masjid because I could be watched. Okay? That's a fear. That's a phobia. We are building it ourselves, and the media is feeding different information that's affecting us. Okay? On the contrary, stand up, get up, go, take care of your normal life. Okay? Obsessive compulsive disorder, like we talked about. Post-traumatic stress disorder, which we already spoke about. Symptoms of anxiety, the cardiovascular, like we were talking about. Respiratory, okay? Sometimes a person is hyperventilating that you have to give them a bag to breathe into because now they got over oxygen, and now what's going to happen? They're breathing so fast. What happened? They pass out, okay? The neurological, which is the headache, the dizziness, the sweating, okay? I'm sure we've all experienced something like one of these, okay? The gastrointestinal, like I was talking about, okay? Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation or some. Musculoskeletal, okay? We always say, okay, my neck hurts, my back hurts, right? If you look at every single time, your neck, your shoulders are hurting, if you just sit down, adjust your posture, put your hand on your chin to straighten up your neck, okay? It's going to lower down your shoulders. You'll start realizing that you actually tense, and that's why you're having all this neck pain, which is now leading to a headache, okay? So that's one of the musculoskeleton that as we tense up, what happened? We start lifting up, we start bringing our shoulders forward, affecting the muscles of the neck, tension, headache. Okay. The anxiety, the signs and symptoms is unrealistic from a physiological point of view, is unrealistic or excessive fear or worriness, okay? Or decrease, we'll see it also being, affecting the concentration to memory. Irritability, okay? Confusion, restlessness. Person cannot sleep at night. From a behavior, you start seeing them, okay, they're withdrawn, they are having, avoidance in different situations. They may not want to be involved in social gathering, or they could have the obsessive compulsive disorders or phobia to different behaviors. Okay, risk factor. People more likely to react to anxiety and feel threat who are more sensitive and emotional in nature, have history of anxiety in childhood or adolescence, women as we talked about earlier, alcohol abuse, and have experienced some kind of traumatic event in their life. Okay, medical conditions are on side effect of other medication and prescription can cause, of course, these also. Intoxication or withdrawal from alcohol and drugs can bring in anxiety disorders as well. And same thing with sedatives and other medication. Panic, as we talked about, the chest pain, the discomfort, all these different things, of the panic. Somebody feel like I'm literally being choked. I cannot even breathe, We're describing it as like, I can't talk, These are normal, panic disorder. Excessive sweating, okay? I mean, it could be cold, but the person is going into a panic disorder and they're sweating, okay? One of the most common things with panic disorders, you'll see also associated other illnesses, thyroid problems, okay? When there's an imbalance in the thyroid, you can see different type of mental illnesses that will develop, okay? From depression to panic to multiple different slew of mental illnesses that will manifest as a mental illness, but in reality, it's a thyroid disorder. So it's very, very important to, for a physician when he's looking at these things, is to look at the thyroid disorder when they, want to go ahead and assess a patient. Chills, hot flashes, shaking, trembling. I mean, it's all very, very common. These are not things, in all honesty, that you don't see, and it's something that most of us have experienced in our life at some time or another. Yes, sir. Paranoid schizophrenia we'll be covering it in a little bit, but that's an imbalance on the brain hormones, okay? That's extremely common, okay, when it comes to mental illnesses, okay? One of the most important facts of it, and for successful treatment of paranoid schizophrenia, is that the patient recognizes that I have an illness. The paranoia, yes, it is affecting me, but I know it is not real, okay? And take their medication on time. Then comes in the psychological support, okay, which can help tremendously, okay? As we say, one hand cannot clap by itself. It takes two to tango. It takes two hands to clap. So the most important thing, specifically for any type of schizophrenia, or specifically I can say also for any type of mental illness, is that convincing the patient to take medication. And regretfully, what happened is a lot of patients are in so much of a down spiral turn that they refuse to take medication. They don't believe that there's anything wrong with them, and they're thinking that the world is against them. And sometimes the only way to get them to recognize that they are not only endangering themselves, but they're endangering the rest of the family is you have to say, you know what, you cannot stay in the house unless you take your medication, okay? Calling 911, bringing the police department, taking a person to a hospital, sometimes is extremely necessary in order to start the patient on medication. There's the 5250 where it's 72 hours. Now there is another law, okay, where they can hold a person for a longer period of time and to force them to take medication, okay? And you see that once the person gets on medication, it does make a change, okay? Will they completely be healed? I know people who have, okay, and I know people who have not because of their not taking the medication regularly. But I know a person, in all honesty, now is a professor at one of the local universities who in his mid and early 20s, his family had to kick him out, okay? He was homeless for about 3-4 years, okay? But then when he got the help, his life started changing. He's married, he has children, he's a professor at a university, and he advocates for mental illness a lot now. His father is one of the people who actually got me to be involved representing the Muslim community with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. Now there is a lot of organizations out there. NAMI is one of them. NAMI not only provide education, but NAMI plays an important role in providing assistance and therapy and support to the family. Because of the fact a family of a mentally ill patient have a lot of suffering themselves. And it gets to a point where they're like, okay, I've had it, and then you start seeing them going into depression, you start seeing them having different symptoms. So NAMI has programs. We've assisted them to establish some of the programs in Arabic as well. I can speak on behalf of LA County Department of Mental Health because we've done a lot of programs with them and they're very, very supportive. We've reached out to Orange County Department of Mental Health. They've been very slow in their response, but at least they're coming along, and between the two different organizations, inshallah, we're going to be putting a clergy advisory, a clergy academy very soon as well. Obsessive compulsive disorders we already discussed. They could be from food to everything. Post-traumatic disorders we've already discussed. Personality disorders, those are the schizoid or the schizotypal or the paranoid type of personality you were mentioning with the schizophrenia also. And then there's the borderline or the narcissist or the antisocial personality. These, cluster B tend to be extremely manipulative. Yes? The simplest and the easiest thing that you want to do is two things. Have them sit down, relax, control their breathing. Okay? And even you may want to get a hold of a bag, one of the brown bags. Okay? Because if they're just hyperventilating, you really got them to breathe. You have to make them breathe into a bag. Okay? But you got to also understand why they're having a panic attack. Okay? Did they get a phone call? Are they having chest pain? And please do not assume it's just a panic attack or an anxiety disorder if they start holding their chest or they say, I'm having some pain. Immediately do call 911, okay? And let them take care of it because you don't want somebody having an MI, heart attack, okay, where it could have been precipitated by the panic attack or whatever it was, the panic attack. Does that answer your question? Somewhat. Okay. Well, there's no magic thing like I'm going to say, okay, go ahead and give them water or give them a baby aspirin or this. That's going to calm them down, okay? You just got to sit them down, okay? If you see them pacing, just sit them down, okay? If you see them even getting more of a pain, even have them lay down, okay? Laying down at least is going to go ahead and normalize their blood pressure, the blood distribution. The heart is not having any more excessive work on it, especially if they could be having a heart attack, okay? by them laying down, you've reduced the amount of the load and the pressure on the heart itself. Okay? Borderline personality disorders is where somebody feels empty and lonely and they don't exist. They usually always, who am I? They're always questioning themselves. They feel that they are worthlessness. They are usually very self-destructive, and they are emotional, very vulnerable, and they also very intense grief, terror, panic, and feel abandoned and betrayal. They are really, basically, don't trust people. Okay. The psycho and the social, the social and the psychopath. These are people who are very impulsive. They're very manipulative, and the minute they don't like what you're saying to them, okay, I'm going to go ahead and kill myself. Okay. They always use these things. Okay. You either, and we see this a lot with teenagers. Okay. If you're not going to get me a car, I'm going to kill myself. Okay? If you don't get me this, I'm going to go ahead and hurt myself. I'm not going to eat for the next 3-4 days. I'm not going to do this, That's very common in teenager behavior. Okay? But inshallah, it doesn't develop into becoming a psychopathic behavior or a behavior that's going to affect them in their life later on. Okay? The narcissist is somebody, who just basically, it's me. I'm the most important person, and let me be in the room as the center of the room for attention. Okay, let's see. Psychosis. These are people who suffer from disorders. They hear things, they see things, and they are being commanded by people. Very common in the schizophrenic people. Now, excuse me. I'll give you an example. A person who all of a sudden, specifically for being a male, early 20s, all of a sudden, start showing up to the masjid excessively, start praying a lot, start wearing we want to call the thobe, and the beard is growing. You look at it from different cultural aspect. Some will say, okay, mashallah, we got a hafiz, we got a pious child, a son in the family who's going to be the next imam. Right? Some cultures will say, and this is all within the Muslim community. Some culture will say, okay, what's going on with him? We don't like this, that they start putting pressure on him. So we got the religious aspect, we got what in the world he's doing, and then we got the law enforcement looking at him, is this a sleeper cell all of a sudden? So we got 3 different components on that one person, where in reality, one of the first signs of schizophrenia is hyper-religiosity. Across every culture, every religion. The very strong development of religious association. Okay? It's very common. So, let's not immediately jump into conclusions and now immediately identify a person as being hyper-religious and as going to be the next imam, or we're going to look at them and say, well, no, that person is definitely going to be schizophrenic. Okay? But it is common. We have to look at it, and that's one of the things that we're working with is education to the law enforcement, specifically within our community, on how to identify and how to look at these things and how to approach these things, because of the fact that we know our community is under the microscope. So we need to provide more education in order for people not to be falling in an entrapment or falling into an event where they need therapy or need to go to the hospital to get medication, and instead of being put in jail or questioned and can affect them down the line and then it develop into a post-traumatic stress disorder. Risk factors. The genetic factors is the most common and one of the most effective one. The biochemistry, the stress as you were talking about earlier, Brother Samer, and that is the normal stresses of life, but yet it can develop in affecting our hormones. Okay, alcohol and drug abuse, may Allah protect us and keep us away from it and our families and those that we know. But Do we have alcoholism in our community? Yes, we do. Do we have drug abuse in our community? Yes, we do. Do we have suicide in our community? Yes, we do. And actually, they've done a study, which is, I was shocked by it personally, when they looked at college students, first 2 years of college students, and they looked at from different ethnical and religious backgrounds, and they found out that regardless of religion, 40% of college students the first 2 years experiment with drugs or alcohol, okay, regardless of faith. So all we can say is we pray that Allah protect our children, okay? So please, let's not be always saying we Muslims don't have these things, okay? We do have them. Statistics have showed them, so we need to just be more proactive. Schizophrenia, one of the most prevalent and effect in terms of when we always think of mental illness, we're going to look at a schizophrenic type of person in our mind, and those are the type of people who you cannot associate with. They're hearing different commands, they're delusional, they could be also paranoid, and they could be also very aggressive, different type of schizophrenia, okay? Yet it is one of the ones that are hardest to treat, but there's a lot of treatments and a lot of medications, a lot of therapy for it. Yes, brother? Again, that's where the component of the psychological therapy, okay, can assist, okay? And also then I strongly recommend whatever medication the person is on to go ahead and have his provider run a blood check for him to make sure that he is at therapeutic levels, okay? Because sometimes we could be over-medicated simply by having a cold or drinking, for example, grapefruit juice or eating grapefruit, okay? There's different foods that can, or cheese, okay, different type of cheese. If we eat it, it can affect the way our system either become hyperactive in clearing out the medication or slows down the medication in our body. So it's very important that if we start developing those, hearing those voices or something like that, is to go ahead and start looking at it and then, you know, looking into what could be the reasons for it, okay? The addictions, they're always, you know, commonly existing between mental illness, and then there's always an alcohol or drug abuse or other gambling or something, very commonly coexisting. Whenever there's an addiction, there's always a component of mental illness with it, okay? It's extremely common. Mental retardation, there's different types of mental retardation. Down syndrome is one of them. Regretfully, in our community, I personally know families who have children with Down syndrome, okay? The fact that, what I'm saying regretfully, is because of the fact that our community is so behind in recognizing there's a lot of assistance to families who have children with Down syndrome. There is governmental assistance, there's state assistance. The state will send somebody to the home to educate the person, take care of the child. There is a lot of things can be done. Yet, what do we see? The family shunt away the child with Down syndrome as they were not even existing, and they don't even recognize that they have an extra child in the house, okay? It's very, very sad. I personally, when I grew up back home, I remember, if this one child left this house, he's going to eat all the kids in the neighborhood. And all the kid wanted to do is go out and play, okay? He was overweight, Down syndrome, typical big size, big face, round and everything. And he wanted to go out and play, but he was always locked up in a room, okay? Very, very sad that we, in our community, is we don't have the education. So if you do know, if anybody that have any child, any even sibling or anybody that have any mental illness, please reach out. There's a lot of organization, a lot of help that can be assisted. Dealing with mental illness, one of the more important things is that indeed it is an illness. We need to recognize it and then reach out for assistance and see what can be done about it. It is a component that affects us, like I was saying, from an organic point of view, but, you know, let's not forget that through religion, through our belief, we can lower our stresses, lower the fact by recognizing what Allah has blessed us with, because I can guarantee you, today illness, when we feel we're so down, yet there's somebody who is much worse than us, okay? And if we just start recognizing how blessed we are, wallahi, it will help us overcome things. Having said that, I go back to reminding everybody there is an organic component to mental illness that has to be recognized, has to be treated, has to be looked at, and we need to make sure that a person is receiving the proper therapy for it and not just going ahead and say, forget about it, let's go ahead and take him. Let's go ahead and make sure, brother, you're here for Fajr, you're here for Dhuhr, you're here for Asr, you're here for Maghrib, you're here for Isha, and you know what? Make Khatm al-Quran and it's all going to heal. Okay? There is both sides of it. I know we are running out of time, so I just want to make sure if there's any questions, I'm going to stop right over here. If there's any questions, please do let me know. Yes, brother. Alzheimer's is a disease that is very common in prevalence that's affecting the elderly population. Okay, it is a diagnosis because of the condition it is. Okay, the only way that an Alzheimer's definitive diagnosis can happen is post-death when they take a look at the brain and they see the plaques of Alzheimer's in there. However, Alzheimer's affect the memory, detachment. The person may not even recognize their family with time. One of the best thing to assist an Alzheimer's family is the support to the family, the support also to the patient by reminding them what day it is, writing cue cards to remind them where they're going, what to do, turn off the stove, turn off the light switches, wash your hands. All these things can help and assist. Okay. There is a website called Lumosity, and that website you can sign up for the membership, which you pay a monthly dues for it, or you sign up for the free version. But as you do the free exercises, every time you finish a level, it opens up another level for you. So you can constantly use it, utilize it. It's like video games. It's an exercise to the brain. It's very important. Lumosity, Lumacity, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, brothers. Yes. Which were the first slides, when I talked about jinn. Yes, there is a component of jinn, right? We know that jinn do exist. Allah mentioned in the Quran, okay? But because of the stigma that we have against mental illness, we tend to put everything and blame it on jinn. Okay, that's the issue here. But if you look at it, in reality, what percentage of them are actually possessed by jinn? Okay? Less than 1% probably. Okay? I don't think there's ever been a study back home done about it that can give us the true numbers. Okay? But it is a way for us to go ahead and just shunt the idea of mental illness because of the stigma that exists behind it. Yes. That is actually more of a psychotherapy. The question is, for the personality disorder, for the narcissist, where all they talk about is themselves. I'm the best. They need the attention. They need to be validated all the time. That's more of a psychosocial therapy where they need to have a lot of therapy to talk to them. A therapist then, goes in and find out why did they develop it and start coaching them on how to do it right. That one is not a organic component that requires usually medication. They may put them on certain beta blockers to control their heart, to control their anxiety that comes with it at times, to assist them, and some of the phobias that comes with it as well. But it's more of a therapeutic sessions that is done with a one-on-one session with a therapist, and it usually takes a long period for a person to go through it. Sisters, yes. I'm sorry, what was it? Fibromyalgia, it's been looked at from both ways. When I was in medical school, it was always thought about it being a mental illness. However, today's studies show that it has a component of depression as well as a component of actual aches and pain in the body. So it is treated as a medical condition rather than a mental condition. Does that answer you? Okay, let me re-say it. It is more physical now. As of about 2 years ago, it is being more recognized as a neurological, more of a physical than a mental. Okay, whereas in the past, yes, it was looked at. A blood test may not give you every result every single time. Okay, but there are, different parts. And if somebody has 7 or 8 of them when they're doing the study and the components of the areas that hurts, okay, fibromyalgia can be very devastating. Fibromyalgia can lead into depression. So now it was always looked at as more of a mental, which may have a physical component, but now it's really truly believed it's more of a physical, and because of the physical component of it, it will lead to a mental, which is specifically more of a depression and anxiety sometimes. Yes, sister, I'll come to you. 1 second. I'm sorry. Yes, sister. So the question is, when we're saying organic, is there an actual test that will show that? Okay. Yes, and that's simple blood test to check the serotonin level, to check the GABA level. It's blood levels of different hormones, and based on those, you can tell what medication needs to be given in order to boost up the medication. To boost up the level of the serotonin, for example, in the brain, by, for example, blocking the receptors so that the serotonin stays longer, and or take it back in there, much faster, and push it back into the neurons. Yes, it is. It is hormonal due to estrogen, okay? And the sad component of it is most women will not recognize it, and they see everything around them, and everybody around them is wrong, okay? Whereas if they start on something like Premarin, okay, and I strongly suggest that being followed by a gynecologist who will prescribe the proper medication rather than just start taking anything, or all these promised over-the-counter herbs. I don't recommend them at all, okay, because they can have a lot of other side effects, including bleeding, okay? So estrogen, Premarin specifically, is very effective, but also please do recognize the fact that somebody may take it and they're thinking, okay, well, I've been taking it for a month. So what if I skip a day? Where in reality, skipping a day is going to take about 3-4 days to go back to a therapeutic level. No, it will not lead to chemical dependency, and also studies have shown that, because the argument in the past was taking all these things are they going to increase the chances of cancer? Okay. However, the level of Premarin is much lower, as well as there's other medication that can, balance out with it. Jazakallah khair for your question. Oh yeah. Yes. It's a horse. Correct. But you're not taking the urine. You're taking what's being excreted, the hormone itself. Okay. But it's purified. And that's a question more of the sheikh than me. Okay. I honestly tell you, I mean, I am more, even one of my teachers at medical school was a very religious person, okay, who studied in Azhar. Actually, he said, look, if you had 2 cough medications, okay, one has the alcohol in it, which is NyQuil, and one that does not. Choose the one that does not. But if only NyQuil is the one that's only and only and only gonna be the therapeutic one, then go with it. But at the same component of it, for example, the heart valve. You can take a heart valve from a pig, and the body will not reject it. Or there is an alternative. Take an artificial heart valve. Okay. So, yeah, bovines. So Premarin is everything I've read about it. All I can say, everything personally I've read about it is halal. It's not a problem. And Allahu A'lam. Okay. Yes, sister. Allahu A'lam. I said Allahu A'lam. I said maybe it will be 1% if we were to look at it because of how we have it back home. Everything is jinn, jinn, jinn. And subhanAllah, they are praying and they're thinking of the jinns, and yet you walk home, you see the blue stone, to protect over the evil eye, and the baby is attached to the blue stone and all that. The weakness in faith, okay? And there's, of course, magic, sihr. I mean, Rasul ﷺ was afflicted by it, okay? And Rasul ﷺ said, read the ma'udat 3 times a day and, wipe your body with it. That's the best protection. Yeah. Okay. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for having me. Inshallah, you enjoyed it. And I'm sorry that was too fast and a lot of information.
So, alhamdulillah, we have a sister here that she's doing a survey. She's doing her Ptsd. And the requirement to be part of this survey is people who work and have worked in the Middle East and North Africa for 1 year. They could participate in this survey. Can you raise your hand, sister? Okay, so please, if you worked in the Middle East for 1 year, North Africa, you've been living here for a while, be part of that survey. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I don't mind at all. Certified narcissist? Well, I mean, what it means is that's more of a